Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Student Affairs Knowledge Community NASPA 4 East webinar series. We are going to allow people another minute or so before we get started, but I wanted to come on and welcome you. So just hang tight for about the next 90 seconds and then we will get started. Okay, well, I see that we have several guests joining us live this afternoon. So thank you very much. I want to introduce myself. My name is Ebony Turnbow, and I am currently the Assistant Director of the Office of Student Engagement at the University of Michigan Dearborn. And I serve currently as your Women in Student Affairs Knowledge Community KC representative. So as promised, over the last year, our goal has been to engage with our region and with other women colleagues at least once every quarter. And so we've been able to do that, and we are excited to continue that this afternoon. And so as the KC representative over a phenomenal leadership team of 8 individuals, we are excited to present this webinar to you. And so please be on the lookout for our next engagement piece, which will be our newsletter series that will come out in August. And it will be a recap and some blogs and some hot topics that have occurred over the 17-18 year. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to the co-chair of this webinar event, who has worked extremely hard over the last couple of months putting this together, and I couldn't have asked for a better co-chair. So Tamika, if you'd like to take it over and then introduce our presenter for today.
Sounds great. Can everyone hear me? All right, so
it's a little low.
Here we go. Let's see, is that better?
Perfect.
Awesome. All right, so as Ebony shared, my name is Dr. Tamika Scott, and I currently work at Ohio University and serve as the Assistant Dean for Academic Achievement. With that being said, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping before we actually introduce our speaker for today. If there are questions that you may have that we are asking that you actually fill them through the chat feature on YouTube, and I will try my hardest to make sure that I get those questions. And if for some reason we're not able to get to your questions, we want to make sure that you all know that there is an email address that we will have those questions filtered then back to Dr. Murray. That email address is WISANASPAIVE@gmail.com, and we'll make sure we put that in the YouTube feature as soon as this recording is over. So with that said, let me go ahead and introduce our guest speaker for today. It is Dr. Geneva Murray. She serves as the director of Ohio University's Women's Center, and we are filming this live via YouTube. We do have several individuals in the office, in the room that we're in now, so we're going to ask those of you who are online, please note that this is a live recording. So if there's conversations or questions that you may have regarding some of the topics, we ask that you send your questions to that email address that I shared earlier, and we will be able to filter those directly to Dr. Murray. For those of you who are in the room, we ask that you remain quiet as possible because this is being recorded. Also, if you do have a question during the engagement piece, that you speak loud enough so that it can be picked up on the recording. And if there are any times where you feel like you can't hear us, please let us know in the chat feature. And like I said, I'll try to filter that information to Dr. Murray for us to speak up. With that being said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Murray.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am very excited to be here with you today, and I hope that the people that are in the audience with us can serve maybe as like a live studio audience with a laugh track. That would be much appreciated. Thank you. So as it was said, I'm Dr. Murray. I'm the director of the Women's Center here at Ohio University, and I am absolutely passionate about leadership for women and what that can look like, how we instill confidence in each other and in ourselves, and then also what that means for us on a wide range of spectrum, from how we can bring people up within the workplace to asking for promotions and renegotiating salaries, etc. So when I was asked to speak today, I was initially asked to speak on salary negotiation, which is one of my favorite topics since I butchered my first salary negotiation. And I thought, I never want anyone else to have to go through that experience of not knowing what to ask or how much they were worth, or even just this idea of being so grateful for the job that you forget that you have value that you're bringing to that position. And so rather than actually talking about salary negotiation, though, I said we have to do a step before. We have to talk about how we can set the stage for salary negotiation. Because if you go in to do a renegotiation, or if you're negotiating for a first salary, if you have not communicated that you are worth it, then you're going to be unsuccessful in regards to that negotiation. And so what we're talking about today is professional communication, confidence building. And in order for us to have this conversation, I want to be clear that what I'm saying doesn't apply to all women. There are women who are already feeling really confident and amazing about the work that they are doing, and that is wonderful. So if you're one of those women, think about how you can use what we're talking about today in supervisions with other people, and how you can think about it in writing letters of recommendation, how you can lift others up. Also, the work that what we're talking about today can also apply to men and people who are gender non-binary, people across the spectrum. And so I hope that people will take what they like, leave the rest, but think about how it is that you can apply what we're learning to a variety of different areas. And so there is a PowerPoint that I hope is coming up on the screen. Does it look good? Sweet. And here are the expected outcomes for us. We're going to be thinking about how we can increase our confidence, and how confidence is often measured in our communication, right? And so there are different techniques that we can use, and there are different gendered patterns of communication that sometimes demonstrate potentially what would be read as a lack of confidence, but might actually be someone trying to manage stigma that they might be receiving from being a strong, assertive woman in the workplace. And we can think about how this has amplified the stigma for women of color, women who transgress gendered expectations. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to manage that stigma as well, and what works best for you in different situations. And then, like I said, we're going to talk about how this can be applied in a lot of different areas. And so the first thing that we are going to do today is I want everyone to type into the YouTube channel who you are, so where you're watching from, what your name is, but in particular, in what ways are you awesome? And I want you to think about this in a professional setting. What is it about you that makes the position that you're in even better because you are in it? And so we're going to take a moment for people to do that. And if you're watching this later on, this is a really good activity for you to kind of be doing throughout the year, and to be thinking about, what is it about me that has made this position even more successful than it would have been without me in it? What is it about my skills and my attributes? So we've got Ashley from Howard University. Why is she awesome?
Jane and Sandy from North Dakota.
Perfect.
Jane is awesome because she supports other women and new professionals.
Okay. So supporting other women and new professionals.
We have Dr. Ransom Friday. She said hello. We have Holly and Cynthia.
I'm going to ask you a question, Tamika. How many people are saying that they're awesome?
14 that are right now that keep coming in.
Perfect. Okay, good. How about for those of you in the room? Why is it that you are awesome? Okay. So one of our participants just said that she can think about how all of you are awesome. And that might be tied a little bit with like, we're awesome because we promote other people. We often think about this in relational terms, right? When we write letters of recommendation for women, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later on, we actually use descriptors that are about relationships. She's really friendly. She's great to work with because she's kind. She builds good relationships, as opposed to thinking about things that are sometimes more valued within the workplace. They collaborated in order to receive a grant, right? Those types of outcomes. Do you have any other why you're awesomes that you would like to share?
Awesome first-time mom, and now I'm just getting back to work.
Awesome first-time mom and getting back to work. I love that. I appreciate that. I'm wondering, for those of you who weren't sharing the why you are awesome, is it difficult for us to talk about our awesomeness? Okay, I'm seeing lots of nods in the room that you all cannot see, but the question is, why is it difficult? Here there is a carving out, a time in which I'm telling you to shout from the rooftops or to shout on YouTube why it is that you are awesome, right? Giving you permission for that. And while I'm not watching all of the comments because I have someone helping me with that, I think sometimes it's a struggle. And if I'm looking at the people in the room, sometimes it's a struggle for them. And the question that I have is that it might be difficult because we're not quite sure what it is that we're supposed to be, right? And if you look at the PowerPoint, we're supposed to be smart. I mean, I'm supposed to be brilliant all the time. But I remember that when I was in middle school and I said something that I thought was really smart, and then one of my male classmates said, well, you think you're smart, aren't you? And I was like, yes, I do. Thank you, right? But we're also supposed to not be full of ourselves, right? So we're supposed to be smart, but not full of ourselves. We're supposed to be perfect, yet we're also supposed to be humble, right? We're supposed to be thin, but let's not forget that we also have to be muscular, but we can't be too muscular because then we might see reports on us. And former First Lady Michelle Obama's arms in and of themselves were debated by the Los Angeles Times when they wrote this article. Her toned arms are being debated. How buff is too buff? I think it can be difficult for women to talk about their awesomeness because we are supposed to be all of these things simultaneously and at once. And that can create an environment in which we might feel like, how can I be anything when all of these things seem contradictory? In what way am I supposed to be good enough? And like I said, this isn't just for women. In higher education in particular, we are filled with rooms, or we have rooms filled with people who are dealing with imposter syndrome. This question of, do I belong? When am I going to be found out? Are people going to realize that I'm not as smart as they think I am? Why do I have a seat at this table? And the fact of the matter is, we all belong. And we all belong for different reasons. Reasons that are diverse, which is what makes us effective as colleagues. But what happens when we start talking about our awesomeness? We might have heard this, right? Men are called the boss. What are women called? You can type that into YouTube if you want. There's some other B words. Any other B words?
Bossy.
Bossy. I was going to say brilliant. But yeah, it's not necessarily always brilliant that comes up.
Aggressive.
Aggressive is what we're hearing from the YouTube channel.
That's the B word.
The B word with the itch. I'm with ya. Right? There's a lot of other things. And I just put bossy as a placeholder for the other B words. It's rarely that we're called brilliant, right? That we're also called the boss. Although that is changing, and I'm really grateful that we do see these changes happening in our society, but there's still so much more. Because how many of us have been told that we're too aggressive? That we are combative when we're just stating our opinion clearly and firmly and backing it up in the face of disagreement. And so how do we start to change this culture? Part of it is by us helping each other to break a cycle where we might say, oh, did you hear what she said? She said that she was really good at this, but I don't know. How can we support each other so that rather than bossy, we are being called brilliant and that our skills are being recognized at the level in which they should be recognized? And so we also want to think internally, how can we break a pattern of underselling ourselves? And I'm going to ask that the people on YouTube go ahead and start typing in examples of times in which you've undersold yourself. And while you do that, I'm going to throw myself under the bus first so that we can have an example of one of the times that I thoroughly undersold myself. So this is Facebook. When I'm with my students now, they're younger and younger, I have to keep telling them that like some of us still use Facebook. It's cool. It's not Snapchat, but it's Facebook. So this is Facebook. And I got my first director position when I was right out of my PhD program. I had applied for positions in faculty, and then I realized, like, I'm applying for the wrong position. I need to be at a women's center. I need to, that's where I find fulfillment. I geek out on administrative stuff. I love organizing conferences and running workshops, and that's really what my calling is. And so I applied to be the director of the Women's Center at University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. And I was young. I'd gotten my PhD when I was still like mid-20s, super excited. And so when my nameplate arrived and it said M. Geneva Murray, PhD, I posted that on Facebook really fast. And I was so excited to share this joy with people. And then people started liking it. And I got really freaked out. I thought, but what if someone out there knows that I don't deserve this? What if someone thinks that I'm too young or I'm not smart enough? What if someone thinks that I'm bragging, that I'm being boastful, that I'm trying to put myself above them? And so then after like 152 people had liked it, I freak out and I post, thanks everyone. Let's hope I don't mess it up. ... And in that ... was really the amount of weeks before I was going to get fired in my mind. Like it was not going to last long. 3 dots. They're going to find me out. I'm not deserving. I shouldn't be here. And someone actually liked it. You'll see that someone liked it. I refuse to go back to see who it was that liked it because I'm guessing it's kind of like a mean girls, frenemies sort of situation. And I don't want to know that about any of my friends. But this was a moment of clarity for me of why am I underselling myself? And as silly as it seems, because it's on Facebook and it's with my friends, what if my new boss had seen that and thought this is the woman who's supposed to be teaching confidence workshops to young women and girls, and she doesn't even believe in herself? This is just one example of underselling, and I'm going to ask if there are others that are being shared on the YouTube channel. When I say in a meeting, knowing a better process but didn't, or when I sat in a meeting knowing a better process but didn't speak up. Absolutely. And I can sympathize. One of the speech patterns that I discovered that I was doing is if I went to speak at the same time as someone else in a meeting, I would slap my hand over my mouth and say, oh, sorry. Very visibly shutting myself down. And so I absolutely sympathize. Has anyone else ever walked into a table or an inanimate object and then apologized to the inanimate object? Because I have. I absolutely have. Where I apologize for taking up space. And when I talk about this, sometimes people think it's that I'm trying to tell people that they shouldn't be kind and caring. And my rationale is, no, absolutely. There are appropriate times to apologize. But there are other times we're saying, excuse me, which is also designating I'm here. This is my space too, is a little bit better than apologizing for my very existence taking up this space. Women apologize more than men. And we see it with our students, or at least I see it with my students. I'm sorry, I have a question. When, as a teacher, I want to throw glitter at them because I'm so excited that they read enough to have a question. But this apologizing for advocating for oneself in the classroom to get clarity, to gain that clarity. Do we have another example as well? Getting hired prior to having my master's degree, along with 7 others who did. But probably knowing that you absolutely deserved a seat at that table, right? But we can second guess ourselves. And when we get hired for a position, one of the things that we have to train out of ourselves, and that becomes an issue when it comes to salary negotiation, they are not doing us a favor by hiring us. We deserve it. They're hiring us because they see something in us. They think that there is something that we can do to help in that organization, to help in that field, to help in that department. And we have to flip the script of how it is that we're thinking and know that we absolutely deserve a seat at that table. And part of this comes from just kind of changing the processes, how it is that we're internalizing some of these discussions, how it is that we're speaking about them, how it is that we're speaking about ourselves. And let's just take a moment to think, how are you at taking a compliment? And so I would like for people who are on YouTube to write out what their response is when someone gives them a compliment and how it is that you receive it. And for those of you in the room, I would like an example while we get some examples from them as well. Yes, how do you take a compliment?
I actually do it really girly, which is funny because it just happened on the way over here. Somebody complimented me on my dress, and for some reason, I resort to a 5-year-old. It's like, oh, thank you, instead of just saying thank you.
Okay. So responding with, ah, thank you. I actually, I think that that's sweet.
and I noticed it was something
right.
that I do.
I mean, I think it's sweet, although we could talk about how some people see that kind of feminization, right? And you talked about turning into that 5-year-old. This is what I mean in terms of people read confidence differently. And so for some, this thank you and turning into like a younger version of yourself could be devalued because we, in general, devalue femininity in our society. And what I'm saying is by no means that we should act in a way that is not comfortable with our own gender presentation. I'm a big fan of the 1950s. I wear red lipstick all the time. I did talk myself out of wearing my cat eye glasses with the rhinestones because we do sometimes have to think about how that is perceived, right? And so if you respond in highly feminine ways, like that's cool, right? But also know that some people might read that differently and not see that as empowered as we would hope. And so as a supervisor, right, changing how it is that we value femininity so that we're holding it the same. So you never have to wonder if having that kind of feminized response is seen as lacking. So one of the things that someone said online, I like the giving hugs, thank you. Always ask for consent first, but yes. Someone said, I say that because our survivor advocacy program director is in the room with us. I would say that anyway, even if she wasn't here. Someone said giving a compliment right back. And I sympathize with that because I've done the drive-by compliments before where someone will say, I really like your outfit. And I don't even look at them and I'm like, thanks, I like yours too. And I like keep walking. I haven't looked at you, but I feel like I have to give one back in order to justify the fact that you gave me one. Other people say that they're a little bit timid. One person said, thank you, but ... I'm very familiar with that ... So this but, right? But I just got it out of the laundry basket. It's not really clean. Don't get too close. I smell, potentially. So one practice that I want to ask you all to do is to start accepting compliments. And so if you are in a room with where you have someone else, or if after this you're going to see a friend of yours, I challenge you to do this compliment game that we do with our students here, which is to have a buddy, look them directly in the eye, give them a compliment, making eye contact the whole time. The person receiving the compliment smiles, says thank you, and then shuts up for like 5 Mississippis. Not just like half seconds, like full Mississippi seconds, and give that space. So that knee-jerk reaction of I have to give a compliment right back hopefully goes away. And then you can do the same, but thinking about how we're giving compliments intentionally as well. It doesn't always have to be about our appearance, our dress, what it is that we're wearing. It could be I was in this meeting with you and you said this, and amplify it for that person. Because if we have imposter syndrome, if we're dealing with that, think about the ways that we can uplift women other than with physical appearance. And we see this all the time when we're reading about what not to say to a 5-year-old girl, etc. But in the workplace, where sometimes it can feel like women are competing against women, what are we each doing to uplift other women? Are we letting them know how good they are? Are we sending them an email that then they can have to put in their file for tenure, for review? What is it that we are doing to make sure that people know how wonderful they are? So I ask that you practice compliments. And this has real-world implications within the workplace as well. Because one of the times that you don't want to reject a compliment is when you're in a supervisor meeting and your supervisor says, the work that you did on that was so excellent. And your response is, oh, thanks, but I really didn't like this. Like, yes, always be growing, always look to do more and to do better. But also let them know that you are deserving. Because if you're always saying, thank you, but, or if you're saying, oh, it wasn't what I wanted, right? And you're stressing that, when it comes time for you to renegotiate or for you to ask for that letter of recommendation, you don't want those buts to be the things that are coming out. No one wants your butt. I'm glad that my laugh track worked on that. So how do we reframe? This can go from everything from, as opposed to saying, sorry, I'm rambling, to saying, thank you for listening. And being okay with owning that space. An example that I can give is I had developed a program here at Ohio University that I was really proud of, and it took a lot of work. And it is absolutely not where I want it to be yet. But I'm happy with it for where it's at right now. And I was talking to a higher level administrator, and she said, Geneva, I just want you to know that you made that look really easy. And I said, I'm really glad that it looked easy to you. But I want you to know how much effort and how much work went into it. And in that time, it wasn't just taking a compliment. It was also advocating for myself to have me be seen. I have to let people know that the work that we do is not easy per se. We need resources. We need staff. We need people to help with this. But I'm glad that it was seen that way. And if we're doing our job well, hopefully it does look easy to other people. So in terms of supervision, how are we reframing what these supervisions look like? Are we carving out space for people to talk about their accomplishments so that they can be lifted up, while also challenging them to think about the ways in which they can continue to improve? Are there questions from the YouTube audience yet? Okay. So, but what does this mean in regards to our leadership style? And so the next thing that I want you all to do is I want you to type in words that you associate with traditional leadership. What does traditional leadership look like and mean to you? How about for folks in the room? What does traditional leadership mean to you?
Hierarchy.
Hierarchy.
Strong.
Okay. Strong. When you say hierarchy, can you elaborate a little bit more?
Like top down.
Okay.
Communication is kind of
Sure.
Mostly one directional.
Yeah. So you should do this, and without there being any kind of like feedback channel the other way.
He was going to say directive.
Yeah. Directive rather than collaborative. Looks like we're getting a lot more from the YouTube channel as well. Are there particular people that you all associate with being leaders? And if those of you that are joining us online, if you can start writing in some of the people that you think about in regards to leaders. We have, in regards to what traditional leadership looks like, poised, direct, strength, courage, organized, mentoring, decisive, mentor, global-minded. And I think that some of those responses might be reflective of the ways in which we're changing what leadership looks like. Any types of people that you all associate with traditional leadership?
Older.
Older? Just that, older. Okay.
Traditionally male.
Traditionally male, white. Yeah. Because at a lot of predominantly white institutions, right, for higher education, that tends to be who fills those leadership positions. And as people progress through the ranks, right, we see fewer and fewer on the whole, right, not looking at individual institutions, but on the whole, fewer and fewer women of color, right, from lecturer to full professor in various fields. And some of the other examples, male, white old men, good old boys club, and then Lori Collins. Sweet. So some of the other things that we have read about, at least in regards to early ideas of leadership, is this powerful great man mode of leadership, right? Which is very directive, it's hierarchical, it's associated with being assertive, dominant, forceful, competitive. And Catalyst in 2007 in one of their leadership reports that said, when you think leader, you think male. And this is certainly changing, and we see this in regards to some of y'all's responses, right? Because rather than going with old school ideas of traditional leadership, we're starting to think more in regards to what effective leadership looks like. And for effective leadership, what are some of the things that you all associate with that? For those of you in the room. Collaboration, good. Delegation. Consultation, good. Lots of collaborative words. Openness. Challenging. Mentoring, good. And we've already seen some of that kind of slippage into what we're now thinking about as traditional leadership, which is wonderful. I mean, that's a sign of things changing. Accessible. Inclusive, getting things done, absolutely. And so effective leadership we're starting to see as kind of being this transformative leadership, that you're role modeling behavior, you're building trust, you're instilling confidence in others and people have confidence in you. You're innovative, you're inspirational, you empower and mentor others. For women, sometimes women might not see themselves as leaders. And I see this some when we're working with the women's mentoring program here at Ohio University, where I will go and I will ask women if they will serve as a mentor. And some of their responses are, but why? What is it that I have that could be of offer to anyone? And my response generally is everything. You have lived experience that our students don't have. So what we have done based on some of the literature that I've been reading is we're trying to flip the way in which we're talking about it. It's not necessarily that I'm talking to you about leadership as an identity, but women are more readily able to identify with this when they're thinking about leadership as purpose. And this is where we get back to some of this relational aspects that some people were talking about earlier on YouTube, right? We like to uplift others. And so if you struggle with putting on that leader role, think about how it is that you lead with purpose. That you're working on a particular project because you know it's going to be helpful for the common good. Communal and collaborative as well as future-oriented. One of the things that can instill or help people in terms of having confidence in others, we talked earlier about how some of this language becomes, or the ways in which we speak become coded, associated with confidence when really it could be us trying, or a lack of confidence when really it could be us trying to manage stigma, etc. Dr. Karen Kelsky, who's from the blog The Professor Is In, which if you haven't read, I highly recommend, and I follow her with great joy. She wrote that she gets frustrated when she sees colleagues and female students sabotaging themselves and undermining their own authority and effectiveness because of an inability to be assertive. And I think that this is a point of conflict, right? We talked about rather than brilliant, women might be called bossy or the B word or other things that aren't particularly uplifting. And so when we talk about assertiveness, sometimes that can make people roll back. But really what she's talking about is to be able to state our opinions clearly and firmly, to back them up in the face of disagreement, to make strong and steady eye contact, to use emphatic hand gestures, right? Women, we have to learn, if we aren't already, to take up space, to say that we belong here, right? And to display calm and confident body language while speaking and listening. But some of the things that we have done, when we think about the language that's used, using filler words more, I think maybe, and these inflections in our voice where it trails off or acts like a question. As supervisors, one thing that we should always be thinking, is this a lack of confidence, or are they afraid of the stigma that's going to come by them being assertive and speaking clearly and firmly? And how can we build a culture in which that stigma is not a risk for women at our institutions of higher education? And then on the flip side, if we are advocating for more leadership positions and we feel like people are not seeing us as being as confident as we are, start to question, why is it that I'm using this speech pattern? Is it because I want to disarm people and make them feel more comfortable? Is it a technique to try to get what it is that I want? Because that can be powerful. Or is it because we are lacking a confidence in what it is that we are saying? And to examine that and to think about what it is that we can do to use some of these signifiers that potentially the people who are going to be in charge of whether or not we get that raise, in charge of whether or not we get that promotion, that are going to be writing our letters of recommendation, to think about how we might be able to communicate with them in a way that they will recognize and honor. And there's been criticism to this idea that you should ever change how you are to be able to fit in and to be able to move forward. And I get that. I think it's on us as individuals to consider what is going to work best for us in what situations, and to be aware that if we don't change how it is that we're behaving, what some of the potential ramifications of that could be, which could be people thinking that we aren't as confident as we are, that we're not assertive, or it could be that people think that we are overly confident and overly assertive. And like I said at the beginning, there's kind of a no-win situation here, because doing this workshop does not end sexism and racism and homophobia and transphobia and all of the things that we would have to eradicate in order for us to just be ourselves. So we have to be cognizant of the society in which we live and make practical choices that sit well with us as individuals. When we are writing letters of recommendation, and we have a whole workshop on this here at Ohio University that we offer with the Career Leadership and Development Center, we want to think, what language and what implicit bias are we bringing into letters of recommendation? So when we talk about lifting others up, how are we describing the people that we're talking about? Men tend to have letters of recommendation that are longer written about them than women. And it's not just men that are writing these letters and showing their implicit bias. Women are doing this too. So we might say that he was a brilliant scientist, and we might say that she was kind to work with. We might say that women are affectionate, warm, kind, and nurturing. And we might say for men that they're ambitious, dominant, self-confident. Women's letters of recommendation have more hedges, as in they have more buts. She was able to do this, but I think she could also work on this. And we saw less of that, or the researchers saw less of that when it was written about men. We have to take responsibility to ensure that when we're writing about other people, we're communicating in a way that's going to help them make that next step. And so we do have a question. How do you continue to navigate your position within a space where you have two supervisors, one white male and one black female, and the male always calls you aggressive? It's a really good question. One of the slide that I just put up is about performance evaluations. Women are less likely to get specific feedback in regards to our performance evaluations, which if we think about how we get promoted, and if we think about potentially in your case, right, in order to make that next step, how are you going to get there if you do have a supervisor who is framing you as aggressive? So I would ask for more specific feedback. Can you provide examples of times in which you have found that I was too aggressive? What does it mean when you say that I'm aggressive? Because I think that that can have different connotations for different people. And asking them to spell this out for you more could help them realize their own implicit bias. I would also talk to your other supervisor and say, this is the feedback that I'm getting from this supervisor. Have you seen that to be true? If you haven't, try to figure out the relationship between those two supervisors, if she can advocate or if she can amplify your accomplishments for you to that person, right? Having someone on your side who can serve as an advocate and say, I'm really surprised that you have this response to her when what I've seen is that she's been able to X, Y, and Z. But you're not alone, right? The research says that women's evaluations, 76% of them versus 24% for men, said that they were too aggressive, that women are too aggressive. And it could be that what you're dealing with is some issues in regards to implicit bias. And I think the best way to tease that out is by asking a lot of questions and saying, look, your feedback is really important to me. I want to make sure that I'm doing whatever it is that I can to help our university succeed, to fulfill its mission. And if I'm being perceived as this, that could be holding us back. As such, I would like for you to provide me with concrete examples that I can be working on, because that's not the feedback that I'm getting from my other supervisor. And then I would also talk, if you've got a diversity and inclusion person that can help you with more specifics, or if you could work with your human resources as well. And I'm sorry that that's the situation that you're in, because that sounds really terrible. I wanted to use another word, but I'm not going to because it's a professional webinar. Were there any follow-ups for that?
So thank you.
Okay. You can also call me. My line is readily available when you do an internet search. And so let me know if you want to talk more. I'd be absolutely happy to. And for other people as well who are trying to figure out how they can work with this stuff, that want to talk further, I'm more than happy to. So I'm going to provide a couple more examples before we move on. So we actually have like a 3 laptop situation so that you all can see the PowerPoint as well as me speaking. And I've got these video links that if you all want to type in and watch later, you can. But for the sake of not disrupting what is currently working, I'm not going to click on them because I think I would break the system. And that's not underselling myself, like I have a track record, but I'm really good at other things. So it's about knowing your limits as well as knowing the things that you're good at. But what these links are going to show you are 3 different role play examples of how we can manage some of the risks when we're outsiders within higher education. So if you are a queer woman who transgresses gender stereotypes, right? And people might see you as being too assertive. If you're a woman of color, and again, like seeing as too aggressive, how is it that we try to be assertive, to be leaders on campus while also understanding that there are a lot of risks that come out of this? And so the 3 examples that I've chosen are 3 different kind of ways in which I've seen people engage with this idea. So if we take this question of what is your strengths, right? Which we might see in a lot of job interviews. The first one is based off of a student interview that I conducted with a student that I chose not to hire, because her response to what are your strengths was the following. I think I'm really polite. I mean, I'm really nice, which is great. I like working with polite people. I like working with nice people, but that doesn't exude confidence to me, right? And so sometimes when I tell people like you need to speak more confidently, they're worried that they're going to in turn sound like this next example, which if asked what my strengths are, I could say something like, what are my strengths? I mean, what aren't my strengths? I mean, I'm just really good at everything. I mean, it would just be really difficult for me to just choose one, right? And people are really afraid that when I'm telling them to speak more confidently, that I'm saying to like sound like a total jerk. Thank you. Right? And that's not what we're asking for, right? There is this lovely place in the middle where we're managing some of the risks as well. We have found that if you use, or researchers have found that if you use we language, if you connect this back to the mission of the organization. You're not doing this for the glory. You're doing it because of the organization, that can be helpful. Just whatever you do, do not erase your I. And what I mean by that, do not use we language till it sounds like the royal queen sort of language, right? So a response would be, you know, I think one of my strengths is that I really enjoy working with people. I enjoy building relationships because I have a vision. I have a vision for what I want to see at the Women's Center here at Ohio University. And building relationships helps us. Getting people excited about the vision. We're able to see wonderful things come out of the Women's Center. Cross-campus partnerships that have enabled us to have amazing programs, including the largest showing of the Monument Quilt to date. And because of those programs, we're able to really advance what Ohio University is doing in regards to a transformative learning experience. So in that example, you can see that I'm using I language. I have a vision. My vision is important. My vision is crucial, right? So there we're advocating for ourselves that space as a leader. But with we language, it doesn't come off like, well, I have a vision and I'm really excited to make sure that everyone follows it, right? Which is where we see some of this bossy sort of thing. Whereas we language and putting it back with the institution has helped manage that stigma for some people. Questions that are popping up? Okay. So moving forward, what does this look like? It means that you are going to need to create a network of people that you trust, that you absolutely trust, that you can work with, that you can help keep you grounded so that people can provide you feedback in honest, true ways, and that you will be receptive to because you have a relationship of trust with these people. And so find your people. They might not be at your institution. They might be through this wonderful network that you all have through NASPA. It might be through other networks that you have, right? But find a professional network that you can work with because we're always going to hear different things about ourselves that we might feel like, oh, that doesn't sit right with me. But having trusted people around you can help you process that and understand it and figure out what you should be taking and what you can possibly dismiss as being some biases towards some of the marginalized identities that you might be occupying, right? You can also put yourself up for leadership positions, even if other people are not doing that for you. Volunteer on committees. Run for one of your governance boards, right? See what you can do to make yourself known, and then also pull others up with you. So think about when you're in these supervision meetings, if you are supervising someone and it starts with students and they're saying, oh, I'm really sorry, but help them reframe that. We have a confidence jar at the Women's Center. It's very much like a swear jar, except I don't go broke, so that's good. But with the confidence jar, we have compliments that are in the jar. So if someone's coming in and they're having a rough day, they can pull out a compliment. And it's not looks-based. We really try hard to think about other types of compliments that we can give. And if you come in and you undersell yourself in the Women's Center, then you have to write a compliment about yourself and put it back in the jar so that other people who might need a boost that day will have it. But it also forces you to stop, figure out, how can I reframe? How can I think more positively about myself, right? Because being confident in oneself does not mean that we stop thinking about ways in which we can grow. But we start thinking proactively about how some of the challenges that we face, some of the areas in which we want to grow, become goals for us, exciting goals that we are working on, and not things that we're using to beat ourselves up about. And so my challenge to all of you is to think about how can we amplify other women. If you're in a meeting and someone says something where they've clearly just repeated what the woman next to you just said, say something like, well, I'm really glad, Frank, that you agree with that idea that Kim just said. That's wonderful. I'm so glad she's able to get this support. If you're thinking about how to help kind of create those spaces, think about what that can look like, not just with your students, but also with your colleagues, in reframing, writing letters of recommendation, and then advocating for yourself. Because in order for you to get to that next step of how do you negotiate a salary, you have to, one, convince yourself that you're worth it by advocating for yourself and treating yourself nicer if you're not currently there. And if you are, that's awesome, right? Then you just have to work on making sure everyone else knows how awesome you are before you can start looking at the very useful tools and techniques for salary negotiation. And I highly recommend the American Association of University Women's Work Smart and Start Smart salary negotiation workshops. Work Smart helps in regards to looking at those promotions and renegotiations, and Start Smart is very useful for your first-time salary negotiation. Yeah, any questions from you too?
No. There's a question about your email.
Huh? Oh, good. There's a question about my email. Yes, please feel free to email me. My email is Murray, M-U-R-R-A-Y, M2 @ohio.edu. And I greatly appreciate any sort of feedback. Are there questions from those of you in the room? And we'll give some more time for the YouTube people as well.
What if your strength really is supporting other people?
I think that's great. So one of the questions is what is your, or what if your strength is really supporting other people? And what I mean by us not focusing quite so much on the relationship stuff is not that you can't focus on that, but you also need to think about what the outcome is, right? So it's not just that Angela and I are really nice to each other, but what has those niceties led to, right? Or if I've supported her, what has that led to, right? So if by supporting, or if by her supporting me, that she was able to help me organize volunteers for Tech Savvy, another AAUW program, then that would be what the outcome is, right? Is that Angela's really good at supporting other people. One of the outcomes from that, one of the tangible things that emerged, was she was able to ensure that volunteers were organized on the day, they had the support that they needed, and we were able to have a wonderful program that supported over 100 young girls in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, right? So it's not just I like supporting people, but what has emerged from that? I have a question in regards to what the confidence jar is again, and if people are about to start crafting, I fully support that, and I want to see pictures. Our Twitter handle at the Women's Center is @OU Women's Center. So the confidence jar, we just have a giant mason jar that we got at Joann's Fabrics, which I frequent frequently, and then we've decorated it very nicely, and then we have a sign, and it says, if you need a compliment, take one. If you are going to undersell yourself at any point while you're here, you're going to have to write a compliment about yourself and leave it for someone else who will need it. Someone else wanted a link for the negotiations page. And if you Google American Association of University Women and salary negotiation, that should pop right up for you. They have trainers all over the United States. And so you can work with the AAUW if you're wanting to bring a trainer to campus. We have a license with them, and so we offer salary negotiation workshops for people throughout Ohio University and in our community. And this past year, we were able to train over 100 students on salary negotiation, and that had been really exciting. When do you know you're crossing the line into arrogance? This is where your trusted network comes from, and I can't emphasize this enough. You have to have people around you that you are going to trust, to know that have your best interests in mind. But again, I think that if you're ever responding to questions and you're solely focused on the I, that's probably a little bit of a flag, right? We as individuals can only do so much. So we need to be thinking about what is that we look like, right? Who else are we working with? How are we giving back to our campus? And if we're thinking from that, right, it's not, I do this for the guts and the glory, but I do this because really and truly and honestly, I feel like Ohio University wants to do more for women on campus. And I get super jazzed when I see other women being successful. And so then that, if I ever lose sight about that though, I think that would be crossing the line into arrogance. And so, but your trusted friends are definitely needed. I mean, to be honest, I've been in meetings where I've had a trusted friend say to me afterwards, like, you might have crossed the line a little bit there. You came out a little harsh. And because there's someone that I work with so regularly, and I know that when they give me this feedback, it's not because they don't like assertive women, because she's an assertive woman. It's because they have their best interest, or they have my best interests at heart. then I'm able to respond to that. Whereas sometimes if someone's saying that I'm, you know, crossing a line, I'm like, really? I think it's just because you don't like the fact that there's a woman who's being clear and frank. And so it is about finding that balance, right? Not letting people who don't want to see women in leadership positions get you down, because some will try. But finding that trusted group to really help you have a personal examination of self. And if you can like record yourself talking about the work that you're doing, I find that super helpful, because then I can go back and be like, ooh, if someone else said that, I'd think she was like a little, you know, and thinking about that. But then also changing the ways in which we would be thinking about other women who sound in different ways. Other questions? Huh? We don't have time for other questions. Please contact me if you have any questions. And thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I hope that if you're ever in Athens, Ohio, you come by and visit the Women's Center. We love to see new people and would love to talk with you about your experiences as well as we share our own. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Murray. This is Jordan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, on behalf of our NASPA committee, I just wanted to thank you so much for doing this. We're incredibly grateful for your time and your expertise. And I can see all of the questions come. And there's your gift.
Came out of nowhere.
And if anyone on the webinar today has questions or recommendations for future NASPA WISA programming, I'm going to post the 4 East WISA email in the little question box on the right, and feel free to reach out to us with any comments or feedback. And thank you so much again, Dr. Murray. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.